Wait, they want us to drink what? Captain Rick's voice boomed across the ship's command center, his disbelief matched only by the bewildered looks from his officers. They'd faced every possible nightmare since humanity had joined the intergalactic playground, a playground teeming with cosmic terrors. But nothing had prepared them for this. Commander Vince cleared his throat, nervously eyeing the holographic display in front of him. It's true, Captain. Reports from the Delmar outpost confirm it. The Kilo Empire has developed a new type of hydro weapon. They're using fluid-based chemical agents capable of devastating entire planets. They've already unleashed it in multiple sectors, wiping out entire civilizations in a matter of days. And now, they've sent us an ultimatum. Rick frowned, his rugged face tightening like a rusty old hatch. And that ultimatum is? Vince hesitated, glancing over to the communication relay where the message from the Kilo Emperor was still glowing ominously. Surrender or face total annihilation by hydroassimilation. They've already targeted Earth. The room went as silent as a vacuum. The Kilos were notorious across the galaxy, not just for their ruthless conquests, but for their terrifying innovations in bioweaponry. The idea of a weaponized liquid that could corrupt and destroy on such a massive scale had always seemed like the stuff of a bad hollow flick. Until now. They call it the Aquadominator, Vince continued, breaking the uneasy quiet. A liquid that can infiltrate any organic system and reprogram it on a molecular level. Once it enters a planet's water supply, it spreads through every living thing, rewrites their DNA, and effectively turns entire populations into kilothralls. We've seen it in action, sir. It's unstoppable. A wave of dread washed over the officers. The Kilos weren't exactly known for bluffing. If they claimed to have developed a doomsday weapon, you could bet your last space credit they were ready to use it. Rick's brow furrowed even deeper as he leaned over the display, scanning the data feed like a man searching for a hidden escape hatch. And they expect us to surrender? Just like that? Bow down to their empire? Vince nodded grimly. They're banking on it, sir. They know how valuable Earth is as a strategic and resource hub. They think we'll cave rather than risk total destruction. Rick stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow that felt like it could block out a small sun. Well, they've got another thing coming. We're humans. Damn it. We've faced extinction more times than I can count, and we've always found a way to fight back. A smattering of approval rippled through the crew. Confidence began to swell, fueled by their captain's bravado. But Vince wasn't so easily convinced. Captain, with all due respect, this isn't like any threat we've faced before. We're talking about a weapon that doesn't just kill, it conquers. Once that liquid hits Earth's atmosphere, it's game over. We'll be their puppets before we even realize what's happening. Rick stared at the holographic Earth, his mind racing. Surrender? Out of the question. Traditional defenses? Useless against something that could spread faster than gossip on a small spaceship. They needed a solution, and fast. Something no one had ever thought of before. Have we analyzed the substance? Rick asked suddenly. What do we know about it, besides the fact that it's got a really intimidating name? Captain Rick leaned closer to the holographic display, his eyes narrowing as data streams about the Aquadominator scrolled across the screen. All right, folks, he said, rubbing his chin in thought. What do we know about this liquid terror besides its ridiculous name? Commander Vince, still a bit pale from the earlier revelation, gestured to the science officer, a young, spectacled man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Lieutenant Sparks has been working on it, Captain. He might have some insights. Sparks, who had been trying to make himself as small as possible, suddenly found himself the center of attention. He cleared his throat nervously. Yes, Captain. We managed to get a sample of the Aquadominator from a derelict ship in Sector 42. The stuff is, well, it's nastier than my Aunt Gertrude's space chili, and that's saying something. Rick raised an eyebrow. Space chili aside, Sparks, what makes this stuff so dangerous? Sparks fumbled with his tablet, pulling up diagrams and chemical structures that looked more like abstract art than anything useful. Well, sir, the Aquadominator is a highly adaptive nanofluid. It's got these tiny, self-replicating nanobots that can infiltrate any organic matter and... Rick cut him off with a wave. English Sparks, or whatever passes for English out here in space. Right, Sparks stammered. Basically, it's like pouring a bunch of microscopic construction workers into your body, and they immediately start remodeling your DNA. Only instead of building a nice patio, they turn you into one of those kilo thralls. The worst part? It spreads through water faster than a bad rumor in a high school cafeteria. Rick grimaced. So, once it's in the water supply, it's curtains for anyone who takes a sip. Exactly, sir, Sparks confirmed. And these nanobots are stubborn. They're resistant to extreme temperatures, radiation, and even the vacuum of space. Trying to destroy them with conventional methods would be like trying to swat a swarm of space gnats with a newspaper. The room fell silent again, the weight of the situation sinking in. Rick could practically hear the gears turning in his officers' heads, all of them coming to the same grim conclusion. They were in deep space muck. All right, Rick said finally, breaking the silence. So, if we can't blow it up, and we can't filter it out, what's left? Do we have any weaknesses to exploit? Achilles' heels? A secret off switch? Sparks hesitated. Well, there's one thing, sir, but it's unconventional. Rick's eyes lit up. Unconventional? Sparks, if it doesn't involve us drinking the stuff and turning into kilo zombies, I'm all ears. Sparks took a deep breath. The nanobots are designed to adapt to any organic system, but they struggle with synthetic compounds. They can't quite figure out what to do with them. If we could flood the water supply with a synthetic agent, something that the nanobots can't process, it might just overload their programming. It's a long shot, though, and we'd need something unusual. Rick smirked. Unusual is our specialty. What kind of synthetic agent are we talking about? Sparks scratched his head, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. Well, sir, the only compound that fits the bill is, well, it's something called polyhexamethylene biguanide. The room was silent again. Rick stared at Sparks. Polyhexa what now? Polyhexamethylene biguanide, Sparks repeated. It's a synthetic disinfectant. We've got stores of it in the medical bay. It's used to clean equipment, but theoretically, if we introduced it into the water supply in large enough quantities, it might confuse the nanobots. Rick chuckled, shaking his head. So, let me get this straight. The fate of Earth might depend on us dumping a boatload of space disinfectant into our water supply. Yes, sir, Sparks said, clearly bracing for ridicule. But instead, Rick's smile widened. You know what? It's so crazy it just might work. Let's do it. Prep the disinfectant, and let's figure out how to disperse it across the planet's water supply before those kilo jerks have a chance to realize what we're up to. The crew stared at Rick, their initial shock giving way to a growing sense of hope. It was a wild plan, but wild was better than nothing. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding the most bizarre, unexpected solutions to impossible problems. All right, everyone, Rick said, standing up straight and giving a confident nod. Get to work. We've got a planet to save with a bottle of space cleaner. And with that, the command center buzzed to life as the crew scrambled to put their unorthodox plan into action. As the crew of the Starbound Liberty prepared to implement their unconventional plan, the ship buzzed with activity. Scientists, engineers, and strategists were all abuzz, working like a well-oiled machine, or at least a machine with a few eccentric gears. Captain Rick paced back and forth, his mind racing with every possible outcome. His personal comms device beeped, and he saw that Lieutenant Sparks was calling. Rick answered with a flick of his wrist. Sparks, how's the polyhexamethylene biguanide prep going? Sparks' face appeared on the screen, looking slightly flustered. Captain, we've managed to extract the polyhexamethylene biguanide from the storage tanks, but it turns out we only have enough to fill about 3 swimming pools. And, it's not exactly easy to handle. It tends to, well, react poorly with itself. Rick raised an eyebrow. React poorly with itself? Sounds like my Aunt Gertrude's chili after a few too many space margaritas. Exactly, Sparks said. It forms these sticky, gluey blobs when it's exposed to air. We're trying to figure out a way to keep it in a stable liquid form long enough to deploy. Rick sighed. All right, keep at it. We don't have the luxury of time. How are we doing with the dispersal system? Ensign Terra, the ship's resident engineering whiz, chimed in from the background. Captain, we've rigged up a dispersal system that can shoot the disinfectant into the atmosphere. It's a bit jury-rigged, but it should work. The tricky part is timing the release to coincide with our strategic windows to minimize the kilo's interference. Rick nodded. Good work. Let's make sure we've got plenty of backup plans. I don't want to end up in a scenario where our planet's water supply is coated in something that looks like slime from a bad Hollow movie. Understood, sir, Tara replied, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of problem-solving. In the midst of the chaos, Commander Vince approached Rick with a grim look. Captain, I've been reviewing our tactical options. We might face some resistance from the Kilos if they realize what we're up to. Their ships are likely to deploy countermeasures once they detect the increase in our activity. Rick looked at Vince, his expression turning serious. We got to stay one step ahead. If the Kilos catch wind of our plan, they might try to sabotage it. We need to be ready for anything. Vince nodded, clearly understanding the gravity of the situation. We're prepping defensive measures and setting up decoys to distract the Kilos. It won't be perfect, but it should buy us enough time. As the hours ticked by, the ship's crew worked tirelessly. The command center was a flurry of activity, with holographic displays flashing, engineers tinkering with machinery, and scientists analyzing data. Rick, who had initially been pacing, was now focused on a tactical display that showed the Kilo fleet's movements. Finally, Sparks burst into the room, his face flushed with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Captain, we've stabilized the polyhexamethylene biguanide. It's not reacting with itself anymore. Well, not much. We're ready for deployment. Rick grinned. Excellent. Let's get this show on the road. Tara, prepare the dispersal system for activation. Vince, coordinate with the defensive teams. I want every ship ready to engage if the Kilos come sniffing around. The crew sprang into action, their movements coordinated and precise. As the dispersal system roared to life, the ship's systems activated a series of coordinated maneuvers. The starbound Liberty was now on high alert, ready to face whatever the Kilos had in store. Moments later, the first wave of polyhexamethylene biguanide was launched into Earth's atmosphere. The dispersal system ejected the synthetic disinfectant in a fine mist, designed to mix with the planet's water supply. It was a gamble, but it was their best shot. The ship's sensors tracked the dispersal, and the data showed that the synthetic compound was spreading through the atmosphere as planned. Rick watched the holographic display, his fingers crossed. He knew that even with the best-laid plans, there was always room for something to go wrong. Just then, the ship's alarms blared. Captain, we got incoming Kilo ships. Tara's voice came through the comms, tight with urgency. Rick's smile faded as he snapped into action. All hands, prepare for battle stations. Vince, ready our defenses. We're not letting these Kilos ruin our day. The crew scrambled to their posts, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. As the Kilo ships approached, their ominous forms blotting out the stars, Rick took a deep breath. They were about to face the ultimate test of their plan and their resolve. With the polyhexamethylene biguanide dispersal underway and their defensive systems primed, the crew of the starbound Liberty was ready for whatever the Kilos could throw at them. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders, and they weren't going down without a fight. The ship's hull thrummed with energy as the Kilo ships loomed closer. Captain Rick took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the approaching enemy fleet. The air in the command center was electric, a tense mix of anticipation and determination. All right, folks, Rick said, his voice cutting through the tension like a laser through steel. This is it. We got a one-shot chance to save Earth and make these Kilos regret they ever thought they could mess with us. Let's show them what humans are made of. The crew erupted in a chorus of affirmations, their adrenaline surging. Ensign Tara and her team were manning the defensive systems, fingers dancing over controls, while Commander Vince coordinated the tactical response. Captain, we're picking up increased activity from the Kilo ships, Vince reported. They're deploying interceptors and preparing for an assault. They know we're up to something. Rick nodded, his face set in a grim line. Then let's give them a reason to regret that. Ensign Tara, divert power to the shields and arm the laser cannons. Let's make sure they don't get any closer. On it, sir, Tara replied, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. The ship's defensive systems hummed to life, energy coursing through the shields and weapons. As the Kilo ships closed in, the first wave of enemy fighters broke off from the main fleet and streaked towards the starbound Liberty. Their sleek, menacing shapes darted through space, their weapon systems primed for attack. "Enemy fighters incoming," Tara called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. Engaging defensive measures. The ship shuddered as laser blasts from the Kilo fighters began to rain down. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, firing back with the starbound Liberty's laser cannons. The battle was a dazzling display of light and color as the two sides clashed in the vacuum of space. Rick's gaze never wavered from the tactical display. The polyhexamethylene biguanide dispersal system was still active, releasing its synthetic mist into Earth's atmosphere. The data showed that the compound was spreading as planned, but the Kilos were determined to interrupt the process. "Vince, any updates on the Kilo fleet's movements?" Rick asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the intensity of the situation. "Captain, the Kilos are coordinating a concentrated assault on our dispersal system," Vince replied. "They're trying to neutralize our efforts before the disinfectant can fully deploy." "Damn it," Rick muttered. "Tara, can we boost the dispersal system's output?" "Already on it, sir," Tara said, her fingers flying over the controls. "We're increasing the dispersal rate. It should cover the planet more quickly." As the battle raged on, the Kilo fleet intensified their attack, launching a barrage of missiles towards the starbound Liberty. The ship rocked under the impact, alarms blaring as systems were stressed to their limits. "We've got hull breaches in sectors 7 and 12. An engineering officer reported, his face pale but determined. "Repair teams are on it, but we're losing pressure in some compartments." Rick clenched his jaw. "Hold the line. We can't let them breach the hull. All crew, brace for evasive maneuvers. Tara, focus our fire on the enemy ships targeting our dispersal system." Tara adjusted the ship's targeting systems, her focus intense. "Targeting and engaging, Captain." Laser blasts streaked out from the starbound Liberty, striking the Kilo fighters with precision. Several enemy ships exploded in fiery bursts, but the Kilos were relentless. They pushed forward, determined to cripple the ship's defenses. In the midst of the chaos, Lieutenant Sparks ran up to Rick, his face a mix of relief and anxiety. "Captain, the polyhexamethylene biguanide is fully dispersed. We're seeing a positive spread pattern. It's reaching the water supply." Rick felt a surge of hope. "Good work, Sparks. Now let's make sure it has a chance to work. Keep monitoring the dispersal status and report any changes." Sparks nodded and hurried back to his station. Rick's attention snapped back to the tactical display as a new threat emerged. Kilo warships were maneuvering to cut off their escape route. The situation was rapidly becoming dire. "Vince, we need to find a way to break through their blockade," Rick ordered. "If we can't get past them, we're trapped." Vince's face lit up with determination. "Captain, we got a trick up our sleeve. We've been working on a prototype EMP pulse that can disable enemy electronics temporarily. If we deploy it now, it might give us the opening we need." Rick's eyes narrowed with resolve. "Deploy the EMP pulse. Let's make it count." The ship systems prepared the EMP pulse, and with a brilliant flash, the pulse was unleashed. The effect was almost immediate. Kilo ships in the vicinity suddenly lost power, their weapon systems and shields going offline. "Now's our chance," Rick shouted. "All hands, engage the remaining enemy ships. Push them back and secure a path for us." With the Kilo ships temporarily incapacitated, the starbound Liberty pressed its advantage. The remaining enemy fighters were quickly overwhelmed, and the path to safety began to clear. As the last of the Kilo fighters were driven off, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. The immediate threat was neutralized, but they knew the battle was far from over. Rick looked out at the holographic display, watching as the Kilo fleet began to retreat. The dispersal of the polyhexamethylene biguanide was complete, and the data showed that the synthetic compound was starting to disrupt the Kilo nanobots. "Excellent work, everyone," Rick said, his voice filled with pride. "We've held our ground, and Earth is safe for now. Let's get this ship patched up and ready for the next challenge. We've shown the Kilos that they can't push us around." As the crew set to work on repairs and recovery, Rick took a moment to reflect. They had faced an unprecedented threat and come through with flying colors. The victory was hard-earned, but it was a testament to their resilience and ingenuity. Looking out at the stars, Rick knew that the fight was far from over. The galaxy was full of dangers and challenges, but as long as they stood together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. And for now, Earth was safe, and that was a win worth celebrating.